right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name's Zach Batty. I'm with the E-Learning Brothers, who's sponsoring this E-Learning Rockstar stage. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I'm shouting into a mic, I just realized. Am I hurting anybody's ears? I just naturally shout. Does it need to be louder? Everybody can hear? Okay, fantastic. Our first session is Train Your Brain with Games with Stephen Baer from the Game Agency. Stephen is an entrepreneur at heart. At age 9, he started Snowmore, a snow shoveling service for his neighborhood. 2 years later, he turned it into a snow shoveling enterprise with 3 employees servicing 27 clients. Fast forward a little bit, and Stephen is the director of marketing at Atari, where he was in charge of classic games such as Dungeons & Dragons, Neverwinter Nights, The Matrix, and Alone in the Dark. After his time at Atari, Stephen started the Game Agency and spent the last decade running creative strategy there, building training games in the healthcare, finance, high-tech, and K-12 sectors. He also has a monthly column on Forbes.com focused on game-based training. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Stephen Baer.
Hello. How's everyone doing today? Come on, a little louder than that. How's everyone doing today? All right, there we go, a little energy. Okay, so I'm going to tell you something about myself, but I think you've already heard this part. I run the Game Agency. We do focus on games, both in the corporate sector and the K-12 space. And we're going to talk about some really interesting stuff today. I'm going to talk about 3 different things. So the first one, we're going to discuss how to use games effectively and in the training space. And we have a lot of tools and tips that we're going to go through. Number 2, I'm going to go through 6 different types of game mechanics that you might want to be thinking about for different educational purposes. And the last thing we're going to do is I want to get you guys out of your seats, those of you who are in seats, and I want you guys to play some games. So we're going to make this a hands-on experience, and I hope that you guys will make this fun and just get involved. So before we go any further, I'd like to ask if you guys can shout out, what are some of your favorite games? Any type of game. It could be board games, it could be mobile games, it could be social games. A little louder, a little louder. All right, there we go. King of Tokyo. All right, there we go. That's not what I was expecting to hear today. That's good. All right. That's another good one. All right, so I heard a handful of things. I'm going to go through a few examples. Solitaire was not one of the ones I heard. I heard some arcade ones. I did not hear anyone say Monopoly, but I want to talk about that in a little bit. Candy Crush, I heard some Match 3. And all these games have really something in common. They have rule sets, they have strategy, and they have a win state. And so what does all that mean? So I'm going to use baseball as an example just to kind of dummy it down to something at my level. Rule sets. In baseball, you need 3 strikes, 3 outs, 9 innings. There's rules attached to it, right? There's strategy. How are you going to get there? What type of pitch you're going to do? What type of batting strategy you're going to have? Or how are you going to steal bases? And ultimately, what's the win state? What actually declares when someone wins? So in the game of baseball, the most runs wins at the end of the game. Right, so we're going to apply those 3 categories, rules, strategy, and win state, to any type of game that we're doing here. Ultimately, what I think about it as on the instructional design side is not just building a game because it's a game, but mapping a game to your training objectives. And I think that if you break it down, you might have way different training objectives for one course versus another. And there are lots of different types of games that you can use. Identification games, memorization games, consequence games, strategy games, exploration games, simulation games, and many more that are not in here. And we'll go through all these in detail. And by the way, if anybody would like a copy of this deck, please just email me and I'm happy to send it out to you. So before we go through this, I want to talk about why games are effective as a training tool. My theory is that there are 3 things you need to think about. One is it turns passive learning into a truly active experience. The more that you can actually get someone to engage with the content, the more it's going to sink in. So games, in essence, really do that. And by marrying really strong instructional design with really smart and balanced game design, you ultimately can build something that is going to be a much more active learning experience. It's very motivational, right? And that's really across the board, different types of games. You can build motivational games to get someone to engage with it over and over again. The more you get them to engage with it, the more it's going to sink in. It's kind of a repetition. And the last thing is data. And I'll hit upon this actually a few times during this talk. Data is truly critical. you can use data certainly on many levels, but certainly talk about what people know, what people don't know, understanding the learning gaps, but also thinking about personas. What does this data tell me about this individual? How are they behaving in this game? What does that mean to my organization? Where do they belong in my organization? How can I utilize them most effectively? And if there's one thing I would take away from this, I think data is actually probably the most critical thing you can use games for the sake of executing them in your learning environment. So who's ready to play a game? All right, I see some hands and some no's. Okay, but we're going to just take the yeses. Okay. All right. We're going to play an analog game to begin with, and then we're going to play a whole bunch of digital games. This first game is called Boom Shakalaka. Has anyone here played it before? Probably not, because I made up the name. Okay. So, Boom Shakalaka. The way it works, it's really, really simple. Everyone here is going to need to find a partner, okay? And I'm going to ask that everyone here takes a virtual set of cards in your hands, okay? I'm going to ask that you all shuffle those cards, because I don't want anyone to cheat, okay? So you got to shuffle those cards. You got to look at the partner, and you got to say 1, 2, 3. And the first round, we're going to use animals, right? So let's say, sir, that you're my partner. I would say 1, 2, 3, tiger. What did you say?
Dog.
All right, so we didn't say the same thing, but the goal is to get to the same thing, right? What I want everyone to do is, I want everyone to go through it until they can get a match, right? So you got to pick an animal. You got to say the animal, you got to listen, so you got to identify what someone's saying, you got to try to hopefully memorize what they're saying, and try to get to the same place. As soon as you get to the same place, I want you to yell out, boom shakalaka, all right? All right, some people here sound like they're excited about it, and most people seem nervous. All right, good. All right, so let's, if everyone can pair up real quick, and let's try to do this, but you got to shout loud, got to shout loud. Boom shakalaka, wow, that's good. Boom shakalaka, that's excellent. Boom shakalaka. Boom shakalaka, all right, there we go. Nicely done. All right. Boom shakalaka. All right, well, we got to a lot of boom shakalakas much faster than I expected. That means that this is a particularly brilliant group. All right. So, what did we just experience? We experienced a silly game. That's the first thing we experienced. We got ourselves a little more casual, a little more comfortable. But in my mind, we also focused on a few things. We were identifying what our neighbor was saying, right? So we were really trying to identify what we heard or what we'd see as a pattern. We tried to memorize it and we tried to apply it. And I know it's a really silly example, but it's a good example of how you can very quickly take some key learning requirements and apply them to a very fun, casual game. My whole theory is that if you take really smart instructional design and you take a polished gameplay, you can accomplish 3 things. And this goes back to my slide before. You can really activate your participants, which I think all of us want. We all want our employees truly active in the learning experience. You can motivate them to stay with it and hopefully repeat it. And you're going to drive much greater retention as a result of that. So let's go through each of these 6 game mechanics that we talked about. I'm going to go through one at a time. And I'm going to start with identification. So identification games. A good example of an identification game is a hidden object game. Make sure that you're playing. Okay. So I often use hidden object games for the purpose of trying to engage somebody before they've mastered something. Maybe we've taught them a little bit, maybe we haven't even taught them a little bit, but we want to basically try to get them to play around with it, investigate, examine, and it's a great tool, certainly, to see what people know, what people don't know, and give them a very safe environment. And I'd say all 6 of these mechanics I'm going to show you are all supposed to be about safe environments for learning, trying, and hopefully succeeding. This next game is a memorization game. So I call this recall. And ultimately, this is about after you've taught somebody something, can you get them to hopefully recall what they've learned? And we use this game really for the purposes of look at a video, look at an image, study it, and ultimately answer the question about what you saw. Did you actually, can you recall it, and did you get it, did you sink it in properly? A consequence game. This is more of a cause and effect. We use this as a branching dialogue, overcoming different stakeholder objectives. You can use this certainly for sales training, for customer service training, but ultimately having a dialogue. In this case, it happens to be green screen video, but you could certainly do animation or even still art for this. Next one is strategy, and we do a lot of puzzles, challenges, little experiments. So this example you happen to be looking at is to teach someone about STEM education, and think about how can you teach about speed and velocity and angles and temperature all through little types of puzzles. So what you see here is these are all different types of puzzles, and you're just trying to get someone to actually engage with it. We like to build a lot of these around contextually relevant topics, something that's a passion point, something that people can relate to. And you'll see, let me just jump forward, these little mechanics here are about just little angles, little shapes, speed exercises, but all things that hopefully bring something to life based on something that someone's passionate about or can relate to. This next one is about exploration. So a self-guided tour through an immersive experience, right? You want to basically create something that someone can explore, try different things, and this is where we start to build out different profiles of individuals, right? We talked a little about the personas. I think there's a lot that can be done in game space, and looking at an individual who is playing a game, seeing what their habits are, where they're going, what they're doing, and trying to understand who they are, what they know and what they don't know, but also what their behaviors are and how you can leverage them most effectively in your organization. This type of game, and certainly the next game, simulation games are great for that. Ultimately, we use simulation games for branching, looking at the different paths that someone goes down, understanding what decisions they make, trying to give them feedback, but knowing that if they make a decision go down one path, they might have a very different user experience. So this one happens to be a financial literacy. Let's skip ahead. And lots of little challenges, little scenarios, and making different decisions along the way, and understanding that as they're making decisions, they're going to have different repercussions accordingly. Okay, so who wants to play another game? All right, I heard a woo. That's good.
Let's get digital, digital.
All right, so now we're going to play a digital game. We're actually going to play 3 digital games. There are some around here, a handful of tablets. Brittany and Jamie are going to hand these out. I'm going to kind of ask, there are more people, which I really appreciate, here than I expected. I think we have 12 tablets, so maybe we can get in kind of groups of 4, 5, 6 people. We're going to play 3 different types of games. We're going to play a match 3 game, we're going to play a word scramble game, and we're going to play a jump game. And I'll just kind of give you the basics on these, and then we'll talk a little about what we played afterwards. Match 3, if anyone here has played Candy Crush, in this game, and you'll see it in a moment, we'll start up in a moment. In this game, the objective is to answer a few questions up front. Based on the questions that you answer up front, that will give you different boosts. Those boosts will be something you can use in gameplay. So then once you're in gameplay, you want to match things. You want to match 3 or more objects in a row, and the more you answer, the more points you get. The next game is a word scramble. So think about Wheel of Fortune, but without the wheel, right? Ultimately, you want to fill in as many questions as you can, and it's just a race against the clock. And the last one is a jump game. So think about Doodle Jump. If you're familiar, basically jumping from platform to platform, answering questions along the way. You want to basically hit as many questions as you can, hit as many boosts as you can, and you want to avoid as many obstacles as you can. So let's see if we can is it easy to navigate these guys to the games? All right. So let's start, if we can, let's start with match. Start with jump, sorry. Let's start with jump. Okay, so a bunch of people here don't have tablets, so I'm going to just kind of play through these as we go so you can kind of see them on the screen, what those who do have tablets are playing. This first game is called Jump, and what you're seeing is just... Okay, so this is a true challenge playing on another screen. But what you see here is a jump game, so registered in. And the goal is to jump from platform to platform, and you want to get to different questions. So answer them as effectively as you can. With each one that you get right, you're going to get some sort of feedback. The feedback can be whatever you want it to be. And then you're going to blast off again. You get a certain number of lives, so if you get the things wrong, then you basically get extra lives once you get questions right. This has a leaderboard attached to it, and it's pretty straightforward game. So this next one's called Match. Basically, you're asked a whole bunch of questions up front. And like I said earlier, by getting the questions correct, you basically get additional boost within the game. And you can set these questions as an instructional designer to whatever you want. All right, so what you're seeing here is you're getting boosts up front, and now you go into gameplay. And the objective here is basically to do as many matches of 3 or more as you can. So you see I'm just basically trying to take any of these icons. You can change any of these icons out as instructional designers to be whatever you want them to be. You also have questions that you can answer along the way as well. But the whole idea is about, and you just saw like Brilliant came up, we have different streaks attached to these as well. So you can have, I think it's Genius, Brilliant, Genius, and Einstein. It can be whatever streaks you want them to be, but it's about trying to show progression as well along the way. And then the last one, and Scramble, like I said, is much like Wheel of Fortune, but you basically want to answer the question as quickly as you can. It's a race against the clock, and you get little feedback along the way. You can also have a hint system, and you can apply that as well. Okay, where are we in gameplay? Are people just to move on? Yeah, all right. So I'm gonna move on, and we'll talk a little about what people either played or hopefully seen a little bit on screen. So each of these 3 games, they all do something different, right? Match ultimately is about asking questions up front and giving someone bonuses for knowing stuff up front. The goal is that you want to weave together some of the instructional design as well as gameplay. I think often we find is either the two are so farly disconnected, or it's not really a game and it's kind of what I call chocolate-covered broccoli, right? So ultimately you want to weave the games up front with questions and weave questions into the gameplay. Correct answers lead to bonuses, bonuses lead to more points, and have different streaks attached to that. The more points you get, you can be Brilliant, a Genius, an Einstein, or we can set those streaks to whatever you want that's specific to your organization. And ultimately, all this are simple gameplay, whether it's Jump or Match or Scramble or any other games we have that are meant to be quick, easy, and fun games that are going to make learning a lot more fun and less of a must-do. Scramble, like talked about, I think has some of the same things as this, but this is more of a traditional learning experience, but with rapid play, right? Show that you master the information, you know it, throw it in there quickly, utilize the hints if you need to, and certainly get different visual feedback along the way. And last but not least, Jump also, it's about including the questions in there, but throughout peppering it and making sure that there's endless gameplay tying to all these leaderboards, both for individual as well as organizational. So I want to talk about data, because I think that regardless of what the game is, data is truly critical in probably what all of us are doing. And if you're not utilizing the data, I suggest that you do more effectively. So I use this example, Candy Crush, all the time. Candy Crush, who I think either you've played it or you're familiar with it, they drive $590,000 a day in revenue. And this revenue is off of in-game purchases. And the reason they drive this revenue is because they're tweaking their game on a daily basis based on how they're seeing someone engage with their content. So just think about it as instructional designers, if we were able to look at how people are dealing with our training, and we're able to tweak our training on a regular basis, and ultimately to our organizations look more like a revenue driver than a cost center, I think ultimately the value, not only would we be making our employees a lot smarter, but we'd also be making a lot more money for our companies. And I use this because I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to use games, and I've seen this with a lot of our clients, to use games to effectively train people, change behavior, and drive a lot more revenue for our companies. So I'll talk about what we have on our side. Over at the game agency, we have a whole analytics dashboard that we utilize regularly for every single game, whether it's small games or large games. We track a lot about what people know, where their learning gaps, what people's behavioral trends are, and probably most importantly, and I've said this a few times, personas. I think personas are really critical, and thinking about what am I learning about this person's behavior and how they most effectively can be utilized in my organization. And there's a lot of really critical information you can get out of games. So let's review. I have a few more slides here. Ultimately, training is most effective because it turns passive training into truly active experience. It drives your employees to be a lot more motivated to engage with your learning content. And as a result, it drives the information certainly much deeper into their brains. And it gives you a lot of data on your employees, what they know, what they don't know, what their behaviors are, what their trends are, and how you can utilize them. We build a lot of different games. On the left here, you see a lot of custom games. These are, they come in all shapes and sizes, but these are based on very specific needs of our clients. On the right-hand side, what you see, and you played 3 of them or saw 3 of them, we have a training arcade. And this is something that anyone in this room can build on your own in 10 minutes or less. And I encourage you to come over to booth 729. We can show you our authoring tool, super simple to use, and super compelling to play as an end player. It's a quick pitch. Tomorrow we're going to be demoing one of our custom games. Really proud to say that the last 2 events we've won at Demo Fest, Best in Show and Best Game-Based Solution. Tomorrow we're showing a game that we built that's focused on STEM education, so it happens to be in the K through 12 space, but it's a pretty deep game, and I hope you'll come, I hope you'll demo it, I hope you'll vote for it, but please come check it out. And last but not least, I invite you over to our booth 729 to play some of our games, but also we're giving away some prizes. Anyone who wants to participate in helping us create a game, help us just dig in, take 5 minutes, use our authoring tool, and come collect some prizes. Appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
Thanks very much from the Game Agency. What a fantastic product they have. Again, I want to invite you to learn more about this and how you can incorporate it into your training. Feel free to visit the booth right behind you at eLearning Brothers. We're so excited to partner with the Game Agency on this and to help them bring this to market. Their developers and designers are amazing, so please feel free to stop by and talk to us. Also, in about 30 minutes, our next session will begin, and it's definitely one that you don't want to miss. Thanks.